Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to NAB 2011 and welcome to the Autodesk booth. My name is Bill. I have Ken LaRue here with me, and you're about to see a presentation of Smoke on the Mac that we like to call Don't Just Edit, Finish, because Smoke on the Mac is the best editorial finishing solution on the market, and it also runs on the Mac platform. Before we get into our presentation, come on in. There's a few chairs left. We're going to just take you through our Smoke Open, which I think is a really beautiful example of what you can do with Smoke. So that's a really nice piece. Let's move into the presentation. We want to start out by showing you a few examples. We've also got different types of examples because if you're not familiar with Smoke, it really has a very diverse tool set. It's what we like to call an all-in-one editorial finishing solution because instead of having to bounce around a lot of different applications, you can actually stay inside Smoke and access all the same tools in one unified environment.
Absolutely. That's really a lot of the feedback I'm getting out by the pods, which has been phenomenal. So Smoke is definitely an editor at heart, but it goes so much deeper because of the tool set. That's really what I'm hoping to focus on here. Now, we also understand that other people use other editing software, and what's beautiful about Smoke is that we can take what you've done in another program, whether it's Final Cut, Media Composer, and bring it right into Smoke. For example, if I jump over to Final Cut, you can see here I've got an edit that was done by one of our clients, Delicious Edit, and they were working on this project for Dreamliner, and they bought Smoke on the Mac to take their work to a new level. So they started off in Final Cut, then they want to bring it into Smoke. And it's quite simple. If I go to my file menu here, I choose export, I export an XML file, I just override the existing one that I did earlier. Now we generate this XML file that I can now bring directly into Smoke. So let's go back over to Smoke, and in my library, I'll navigate out to my drives and go to a dual view where I can access all the raw material, all the raw files, the XML file I just generated, and so on. Another key thing that I like to point out, I just tapped over to the right to get a little preview window here, but a lot of these file formats, as I select them and see the information, I've got 1080p QuickTime files, I got 720 still graphics, I got image sequences. What's great about Smoke is I can bring all of them in without any type of problem whatsoever. Now, of course, instead of me rebuilding that timeline that was done in Final Cut, it's as simple as me taking that XML file, I pick it up, and I drop it into my Smoke library. That's it. Smoke is now going to build its timeline based on what was done inside of Final Cut, and it relinks all the media for me automatically. Now I can take this timeline and load it into my area and just bring it into the Smoke environment. So now if we take a look at the actual Smoke environment here, I'll snap over here. You can see there's the same exact timeline that I was just showing you in Final Cut.
It only takes that long to move it right in here.
It did it all automatic for me. Now I can use all of Smoke's tools to really take this to the next level.
Yeah.
And that's really what Delicious Edit really loved about adding Smoke into their environment.
We'll finish it.
Right. So here's a perfect example. Now Smoke, just like other editors, in my timeline I can add all sorts of different tools to the individual clips and work on them that way. And in a minute we'll get into the desktop tools, which is really what differentiates Smoke from other editors. But a perfect example is this shot right here. So the client had asked if we can emphasize the woman by saturating her a little more and desaturating other elements inside of the scene.
Yeah, we want to separate her from that background. It's all kind of a one color right now.
It's a good stock footage, but they wanted to customize it a little bit. So what we can do with that clip selected, I come over to the left-hand side. I've got all these different tools that I can add onto this, such as a color correction. Now, as soon as I add that color correction, I get a set of tools that I can start adjusting if I wanted to right here in this UI right now. But what I want to do is actually step into the color corrector.
Let's get deeper into the tool set.
Because it is so much deeper. So when I step into that, you can see I start off with my color corrector here, but I can also switch over to what we call the color warper, which is a selective color correction tool. So at the master level, if I wanted to make some adjustments, I can very easily start to dial in. I love the fact the UI kind of disappears temporarily while I'm working on this, so I can really focus on what I'm doing. So I've changed my black a little bit, but let's start getting into those selective colors that I was talking about. So over here where it reads working on, I'll choose that I want to work on a selective, and I can now just come out here and start sampling. I'm actually keying the colors that I'm going to work on in the color correction. I'll do this drastic for demonstration, but so now you can see as I start to manipulate this, I'm affecting only that one area that I had just sampled.
Yeah, you've done an isolation.
Right, did a nice isolation, so we desaturate the trees behind her. Now we want to go and start working on her. So again, I go to another selective, and I come out here and just start sampling her skin tone. Now I go back out here, and I can start to increase the saturation on her. Now the only issue is my bamboo poles that are here are so similar to her skin tone, I'm picking that up. Now I could come in here and try to tweak this and so on the mat, but instead of doing that, let's go back to the timeline where we can just do timeline editing like you would in any other application. So in this case, what I want to do is make a copy of this clip right here, so I can do that just by picking this up and dropping it on there. Now I have 2 layers with the same footage. So this one that I've got selected, let's get rid of that color correction. So if I toggle up and down between the 2 layers, you can see my top layer obviously does not have that. And what we want to do now is create masks so that we can isolate those bamboo poles.
Right, we're going to composite directly here in the
timeline.
timeline.
Right. So to do that, with this clip selected, I'll go over to my soft effects again, and I add what's called an axis. When we step into the axis, no, I'm sorry, I didn't want an axis. Bear with me, Bill. I want a wipe. That's what I want.
Just Alt-click on that. There you
Okay,
go.
so I go back into my wipe. So this is great because even when you make a mistake, you can fix it. So let me stick in here, and if I scrub through here and set my preview properly, you can see what we're doing is all we're doing is wiping from the top to the bottom. Okay, and that's really basic. What this is just a mask, but just for demonstration purposes, let me come here and show you that you've got all these different wipes that you can apply.
These are standard wipe patterns.
These come with smoke. So if I choose my heart one, because I know you all love having that heart
That's
on there.
your favorite.
So,
Yep.
well, all this is really is a mask. I'm not going to use a heart, but I just want to emphasize that we have all these in here, and I can go in here and say, I don't want to use the default. I want to create my own mask. So now that I've gotten rid of that, I can come in here and start adding the mask that I want to isolate the elements on the top layer, simply by selecting those there. I'll come in here and select all those control points.
I'm gonna
and
break
I can
them.
go and break them so I can tighten them up and continue adding my mask. So let's add another mask right over here. And again, actually, I'm still in my timeline, just so you understand, and I'm making all these effects to the clips that are above in the timeline.
Right, so we can isolate based on color, we can isolate based on shapes. We're just going to select all those points.
And break that tangent. Oh,
break, there we go.
Now the issue is obviously my mask is not following my movement from my camera, so what we want to do is we want to add an axis to this. So I'm going to go to my schematic view for a second because each mask has its own axis, but what's great about this is I can add a third axis and I can parent that, so that is now the parent. Now I have one control over both those masks. And you'll notice that in every module I step into, I have access to the tracker. I click on this, I step into my tracker right now, and I can come here and just make some minor adjustments to the tracker reference, and then go here and click Analyze. And you can see just how powerful this tracker is in Smoke. I don't know what it's even grabbing onto and finding there, but it's holding onto that thing perfectly and goes across all these frames.
And just in a few short minutes, you've already shown this all-in-one concept because you've got into the color corrector, you've shown masking, you've shown tracking. We're going to see a little bit of paint. So it's really showing that you've got that efficiency by staying in one application.
And now that I've got that done, also just a note, I saved that tracker because what's great is we can repurpose what we use. And in a minute, as Bill said, we're going to step into the paint. And that's when I'm going to go and use that tracker once again. If we go back now to our timeline, you can see now my top layer has the bamboo that's not saturated anymore.
Let's move down to the bottom layer real quick.
Just you can see it. So
that's
there's
where
my
it
bottom
was.
layer, and there's my top layer.
Yep.
If we want to add a color correction to the top layer, it's easy. We add that, step back in. Maybe we want to just dial down the saturation.
Yeah.
So we'll really separate it from the woman. So now we've got the woman emphasized like the client had wanted.
Yeah.
But like I said, the client now looks at this and wonders, can we get rid of these bolts that we see inside the bamboo poles here?
Yeah, it's distracting.
Now, if I'm in my other editing software, I might have to go into another product to actually do that. But what's great about Smoke is we have all these desktop tools that we can work on right here inside of Smoke. So let me come here where we got a paint tool, and I'm going to take this clip and bring it out to my desktop. And then we're going to just work on our files, the in and out frames here. So the idea behind the desktop, the idea behind the desktop tools is they're individual modules.
Each of these are separate modules, like different products, but all in one environment with the same sort of conventions, so you can kind of really understand and learn it quickly.
So I take my paint tool and I bring in my clip, and you can see I have a full paint engine in here. So if you want to do paint strokes and so on, of course, we can create paint strokes. You can switch your brush to do different things. Maybe I want to be a smear, create these different motion graphic effects or whatever. But what we're looking to do is to create a paint that's going to rotoscope those out for me. So what I can do is use a tool called the Auto Paint tool. And again, I'm going to switch my cursor to be a recursive clone. I'll dial down my size, but now that I come in here, I say take those pixels, and I want you to paint them right there. Let's paint them here. Let's get rid of this.
Get rid of that one too for me.
I'll get rid of that one there.
Right.
And to get crazy, let's get rid of this one too.
So the idea is that you're able to automate this process rather than doing it frame by hand. You can record your strokes once.
Absolutely. And just so you know, the Auto Paint tool is actually designed to write on your stroke if you wanted to. That's why you can see as I scrub, they change over time. But what I really want is just that first frame. The one that so I set up so that we're only going to take the very first frame while we go and rotoscope this.
But we still have a problem, and when you move through that,
right,
you can see that
the
frame
paint strokes are not following along, right? So now we got to track that again. But we did the tracker earlier, so why don't we just repurpose that? So I load the track that I did just a minute ago, and now we go back into our paint, and I click process, and now Smoke is going to go frame by frame and take that first frame of paint strokes that I created and then reposition them over time based on the tracking data. If I had to do this by hand, how long would that take me?
Not to mention it would boil,
Wouldn't
right?
even look good.
It
right.
would never look good because you can't repeat the same stroke twice. So doing it this way, recording the stroke, tracking the stroke, and applying it to the frames over time, you'll get a nice, clean result, and you'll never know that those little
Elements
marks
were
were
there.
on the bamboo.
So that took a whopping 15 seconds. We go back out to our desktop. So here and now I have that clean shot with those elements rotoscoped out.
Go ahead and play it once if you don't mind. Yep, so you can see now we've lifted out the blemishes on the bamboo.
Now another issue that the client noticed was it is stock footage and it's good stock footage, but there's a lot of noise going on in this footage. So they wanted to know if we can clean it up. Well, I'm just like, where we got smoke, I can do anything here. So let's go here to our flame effects, and I have a denoise tool. So I'll select that, I'll take that clip and bring it into my denoise. Now what you need to do is just give it some information as to where you want to sample the noise from. So what I'm doing is adding these sample boxes in different areas, such as on our arm. And I'll zoom in so we really can see this. Now watch how fast I click Analyze, it cleans it up. So now as I toggle from the input to the end result, you can see just how fast we were able to clean that up.
Much smoother look, yeah.
So let's process that out to our desktop.
Yeah, how long does that take? Just
That's
about 10 seconds.
10 seconds to render that back to the desktop. So when you're using your desktop tools, you're generating new media that you then can incorporate back into your timeline using your soft effects. So once it's done, I go back to the desktop. Here's my edit that I'm working on. Here's the new file that I just finished. And what I want to do now is take that and bring it back into my timeline.
Yeah, you want to replace it back in, but not step on the soft effects.
Right, if I just replace it, I'll lose the effects I put in earlier. So instead of doing that, what we have is here's my timeline on the left. Here's my clip that I just finished on the right. I come over here and tell it to replace just the source media, and as soon as I do that, you'll notice that all those paint objects are gone, but I'm still holding on to my soft effects in the timeline. In fact, let's go down one more.
Yeah, and you also see the standard source record viewing is possible for editorial, which is nice.
So that's quick and that's easy. So now I've used my tools inside my timeline, plus I've used my desktop tools to really fine-tune the image and the end result of what the client was looking for.
Right, so I think we're pretty much done with this example, right?
Yeah.
At this point, why don't we listen to Ollie Wade, who was the person who actually provided this footage for the project, and thanks to him, let's listen to what he has to say about smoke.
My name's Ollie Wade, and I'm Director of Facilities and Senior Editor at Delicious Edit. Delicious Edit was started about 5 years ago by our parent company Stage One to service their editing needs for animatics. Since then we've grown into a fully featured boutique facilities house, servicing commercials, corporate, broadcast and promos. I wanted my clients to come and have a place where they can explore all the creative possibilities of their project. We have a core set of tools we rely on: Final Cut, After Effects and Smoke. We also have a 3D department running Maya, Max and Motion Builder. What differentiates Delicious Edit from other similar sized facilities is where they may be based around Final Cut and After Effects. Adding Smoke to our tool set really lets us take on big, fully fledged jobs, but you'll be talking to the person doing the job rather than a department of 3D or a department of editors. You're talking to the editor or the 3D artist. With clients wanting more for less, we have to get speed and efficiency into the workflow, and Smoke's ideal for that. It's a one-stop shop, allowing us to really expand our creative bandwidth. The creative decision behind buying Smoke for Mac was that although we have a Final Cut and After Effects setup here, I wanted a really highly regarded and trusted name amongst producers, and Smoke fitted that bill perfectly. It links into the SAN perfectly well, it sits on the same workstation as Final Cut and After Effects. It's just another application. The star features of Smoke that I really love are things like the 3D compositor is absolutely fantastic. It's a proper 3D compositor. The key is really great in that you can get loads of different sorts of keys. You can do luma keys, difference keys, chroma keys. But it also combines easily with garbage mats and trackers, so everything's together. If I need to track a mat onto somebody moving in the background, I can do it all from one module. The color warp is a great color grader. I think it's subtle where it needs to be subtle. It can be extreme and outlandish where you want it to be extreme and outlandish. The tracker's fantastic. I think it's the best tracker going. Smoke's toolset offers some real time-saving features as well. For instance, we have rotoscoping where, with our ability to track individual points now, what we would have to rotoscope by hand, taking 6 hours, we can track in 10 minutes. Another really cool feature of Smoke is it's very economical with footage. In my Final Cut After Effects workflow, I am constantly making renders to send to After Effects, renders to send back. In color, I'm sending renders out and renders back all the time. With an all-in-one solution like Smoke, I'm non-destructively using my media. I use ProRes throughout the facility, and I can use the same ProRes footage that was used in Final Cut in Smoke. It doesn't need a re-render, I don't need to duplicate footage, therefore saving space in the SAN. It's great to know that Smoke is comfortable working with all the formats we have floating through our facility. One of the key features is the XML import. I can take an FCP project and with multi-layered FCP project and make an XML and bring it straight into Smoke. If it's a red job, I can debear the footage at a higher res, and I have that FCP timeline sitting in Smoke ready to finish. Smoke's allowed us to tackle many challenges that we face. It's fantastic for reversioning work. People have done the original ad in Smoke. Guess what? We can do the reversioning in Smoke as well. Also, fantastic for our broadcasts, our corporate, our promos. It's just got all the tool set we need. And surprisingly, it even helps us out of our previs work. 3D is really pervasive in what we do. The ability to bring in a 3D scene via FBX into Smoke is really important to us. We do a lot of previs, and now we're doing a lot of 3D previs. And being able to combine those all together in Smoke with its 3D compositor, its 3D text, its ability to bring in 3D models is really fantastic. Smoke for Mac allows us to really offer our clients value for money. It stands out in a sea of facilities offering After Effects. It's got a name they know and they trust, and it's got a really fully featured tool set, allowing us to finish jobs to an incredibly high standard.
So I think that really validates and reinforces a lot of the messages as we sort of set up in the beginning, our all-in-one editorial finishing solution. And also something else that Ali mentioned was the native support for different types of media. So this is something else that we want to really reinforce, make sure everyone's clear that the types of media that you're using today are supported in Smoke. So things like ProRes, things like Red files can be brought in and worked with and debared very quickly. So you can basically keep that same workflow that you're using, but then take the advantage of those additional tools that we saw a little glimpse of in the beginning of our presentation. The other thing we want to talk a little bit about is our partnership with AJA. And I think Tony, are you here? Thank you very much. Tony, come on up. Because we have a great relationship with AJA, and we really take advantage of the hardware that they provide, and that allows us to give you this really great performance and interactivity that you're seeing in our demonstration. So Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys have at NAB?
Absolutely, sure. And again, I appreciate you guys giving us a couple of minutes in your demo to just kind of talk about some of the things that AJA is doing and some of the ways that we're working together to really kind of create a well-blended system. Ollie's actually a really interesting testimonial because he is a Smoke on Mac customer. He's also an AJA customer. He's running our Kona 3G card. And as he said, it allows him to move between the programs seamlessly. And that's not just the software, but the hardware as well works across both software platforms. Really just allowed him to go from a Final Cut system, and when he needed to step up to that next level, he was able to do that with Smoke on Mac, but still be able to maintain that same hardware and not have to reconfigure his system completely. Just a couple of details that I want to give you about the Kona 3G card. it's really a full-featured card, and it's got a lot of the professional connections that a system like Smoke on Mac is going to need. It's got HD SDI inputs and outputs, full 8 channels of audio in and out, and something that we talk about every now and then but don't stress it all that much is our warranty and support program. It's not something that we generally charge for, but it's there, and we really pride ourselves on having a strong support system and making sure that our customers, when they're using our stuff, are going to be able to keep using it and figure out if there's an issue, we can get it resolved quickly one way or the other.
That's great. Yeah, I can be a testimonial to that, because we're really actually taking advantage of the Key Pro and using that a lot for our webinars. So thanks for letting us use your Key Pro for that, and it works flawlessly. It's a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a great chance to kind of get it out there and get it used. The Key Pro Mini is something that we introduced back at IBC. It's shipping now. It's the predecessor of the Key Pro, which was a larger version. This is a little more camera mount friendly. Records directly to compact flash cards and directly to ProRes, which is really kind of an interesting workflow, because with Smoke on Mac reading the ProRes files, we're able to hook this up to a camera directly, take a video feed, compress the files into ProRes, and then drop them right into a Smoke on Mac system and be able to work with them right away. So really just compressing that time from the camera to your post-production and get into your finishing. So yeah, it's really great, and you guys are living proof of it. I mean, you're doing it all the time. So
absolutely.
And let's see, I got to remind myself where I'm at. Oh, right, free software. We do have some other bits of software that we ship with the card, just to kind of fill in those little gaps around the workflow. Anytime you might need to do a little something, you've got some tools out there to be able to kind of do that and just really augment the workflow that you need to do here if you need to do something just offline a little bit. So I think that's pretty much all I got, except for one other thing. You guys probably know we've got a little bit of a party going on tonight.
A big party.
It's a small gathering of a few friends. If you've registered for the party, we're getting short on time here. You're going to want to get over to our booth. We're just up the aisle a little bit here. And make sure you get your wristband. That's the only way you're going to get into the party at this point.
You're overbooked.
Yep, we are overbooked. And one other thing really quick, I'm sorry, is we've also got some training stuff going on around the show floor. Smoke on Mac with the Kona cards. I believe it's happening again further up the aisle here. Be sure to go and check that out. It's a great chance to maybe get some hands-on time on the systems and see how all this works together.
Thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for partnering with us on that.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot,
Have
Tony.
a good rest of the show.
Great. Let's move back into the presentation now. Ken LaRue's loaded up a different desktop, and we're going to take a look at some of the powerful 3D compositing capabilities inside Smoke on the Mac.
We were looking at the timeline a minute ago, but now I want to show you why Smoke is so powerful. And one of my favorite tools is what's called Action. So I'm going to step into Action. Action's our 3D compositing environment, okay? And what I'll do is I'll bring in some files here to start off with. So I brought this file in purposely to show you that you can bring in any size file into Action. It's independent, bring in all different types of files and work with them all in one environment. So I'm going to go to a 2-view layout real quick, and here's my schematic view. I come in by default with a camera, and I brought in a layer, so that's why I have this right here. So if I take this axis and I start to manipulate it around, of course we have full availability inside of 3D space. But if I set my view to actually be a top view, I always like to stress the point that obviously Action starts off with a camera that can be animated and keyframed over time. And also, every layer that you bring in, as soon as you bring it in, it now becomes a 3D object. And this is really cool for the fact that if I want to build an environment that I want to add different characters into it, I can switch my layer to be from a flat layer to be a bicubic. Now I can come in here and just start manipulating and bending this in 3D space. We can also start positioning it away from the camera and scale it up and do whatever I want to do to it to build the environment that I want. Let's start bringing in some other elements such as the Coliseums here, and also build. This footage is actually available to you. If you download the trial version, you get tons of different footage that you can use inside of Smoke, learning with the tutorials. And this is actually some of that footage that you will see and get when you download the trial version if you want to download it and check it out.
So you can try these examples for yourself.
Exactly. So let's bring in a couple more layers really quick. So what we're doing is I'm just bringing in layers, and I want to show you here, as I bring in each layer, you see the layers stacking up on each other here. But each layer also has different tools that you can apply to that individual layer, such as a keyer. So if I double click on the keyer, I step directly into the keyer. I'm still in Action, but now I'm accessing my keyer tools, and I'll come in here and just start pulling the key. We look at our mat, we can see that we've pulled a halfway decent key, but we still need to do some work. What I love about Smoke, it's very interactive. By holding hotkeys, I can move around inside the player, and Smoke is actually trying to help me. It's trying to give me suggestions as to what it thinks I might want to adjust to make this key work better and so on. Now, another thing, I started working for Autodesk way too long ago, and I used to be a combustion demo artist. And I used to stack keyer on top of keyer on top of keyer. What's awesome here inside of Smoke is we have what's called a patch. When I select a patch, I now can come in here and start to fine-tune this, and that's what I'm really doing, is I'm adding a keyer on top of what I originally did. So I can go and add another patch if I wanted to, and finesse and fine-tune this. So now we look at this, looks like it's a pretty good key.
Yeah, that looks good.
Through. Now we want to add a garbage mask to this. So I just go over to my garbage mask. And also what's cool is you can actually draw your garbage mask right on the screen if you wanted to, or you can build it by hand. Let me just make a couple adjustments to my mask here, and let's see if I did good. Yep, we got the guy, he's staying inside of there. So now I return back out into action, so you see I set my frame properly. We scrub through this, we've got our guy jumping around inside the scene.
Need to load the next layer.
Let's go one more layer, exactly. So bring this guy in. But also, because I just did that key and that mask, let's just select it, copy it, select that layer that I just brought in and paste it. So now we've reused what we just created a second ago, and I can step into here just to make sure that this guy is not getting cropped in any way. No, he looks great. So we step back out into action.
So that's an efficient way of working, copying and pasting the same key from one layer to another.
Right. I'm going to position these guys where I want them to be. So each layer obviously has its own axis. What I like to do also is bring another axis in where we can now come and connect it so I have a master control. So if I wanted to manipulate this in Z or whatever, I have that control.
You can also see the schematic is a very useful thing to have up because it shows you like a picture of what you want to manipulate, whether it's scaling or positioning. It's easy enough to just see what you're going to choose what you want from within the schematic view.
Exactly. Also, just for demonstration, I love going to the top view when I do this because I want you to swatch this view. I'll take a light, I'll drag a light into my scene. Look how it's so interactive inside of my 3D environment. As I position it in my top view, we can see it affecting my background, all my elements inside of my 3D environment. So maybe I'll take this light and drag it closer to the camera to light the scene. Let's go back to a schematic over here. Let's add one more light in here. Now, first of all, oh, you know what? I'm going to throw that away for 1 second. I forgot something. Bear with me. I want to add shadows to this.
Yeah, because we can do 3D lighting in this scene as well.
So what I'm going to do is just go and add shadows to this. And as I select my light and I move it around, you can see we're casting shadows. But we do have an issue. I don't like the fact that it's affecting my background plate, the clouds. So what's great about Smoke is I can go to each individual layer and I can control whether that layer is going to receive shadows, cast shadows, and so on. So I just turn that off, and now with my light selected, you can see my shadows are being cast properly only on the Coliseum wall. And we can bring a little more softness into this, maybe bring the transparency down, and really finesse my shadows to where I like them. All right, now let's go bring in another light. So I bring this light in. First thing I like to mention is notice how it's interacting with the shadows that were already being cast like they would in the real world. But instead of this just being a light, what I want to do is add lens flares into the scene. Now, since I'm in action, my 3D environment, these lens flares are going to be full, true 3D lens flares.
Yeah, we're not just stamping 2D lens flares on top of the scene and using some kind of mathematical operation to subtract mats from it. We're actually placing a 3D light inside of our scene and attaching the lens flare in 3D space.
Yeah, we're Autodesk. We don't do flat 2D. We do 3D.
That's right.
So here I've got my lens flare placed where I want it to be. Now also understand that the lens flare and the rays or any type of lighting effects respects the actual 3D environment, meaning this I have alpha information, transparency information, or if I even had 3D geometry, if I drag this back in negative space enough, all of a sudden my lens flares disappears. Well, that's because it's now behind the Coliseum walls. But as I start to bring it to where there's transparency, you can see that it starts to respect as if in the real world.
Yeah, real world natural occlusions occur. If something's in front of the light, in front of the lens flare, then it will block it.
I've also added some rays to this. Now I can expand this out. So now I've got my God rays, volumetric rays happening in 3D, all inside of my action environment. There's so many uses you can use with this. This is just awesome.
And if you orbit the camera around, you'll see that these are actually volumetric 3D rays inside of this 3D compositing environment. And it's really, really powerful set of tools. So that's a pretty good example. I think that the keying was a little too easy, Ken.